in engineering. And for 39 years, I worked in the oil and gas industry, primarily on the natural gas side. Natural gas is used to cook your food, but it also turns turbines which produce electricity that charge electric cars. So natural gas is an important part of our society. My jobs for the last 20 years mostly involved ensuring that we safely contained and controlled natural gas. When it's released safely, you can cook your food. But when a pipeline transporting natural gas fails, the resulting explosion is chaotic and very destructive. A pipeline explosion can destroy everything within hundreds of feet. In 1993, one of the pipelines owned by the company I worked for had a catastrophic failure in
Reverend Tucker worked 30 years in the oil and gas industry and in natural gas. I know that.
Apartment complex with over 500 apartments burned to the ground. Only one person died during evacuation. Even so, the outcry from the public was swift, but not terribly realistic. Get rid of all pipelines, use trucks. People are mostly unaware of all the effort taken to prevent chaos, like from natural gas. But when something tragic happens, first reactions are often ill-conceived. If we had listened to the public and outlawed pipelines, we would have needed an 8-lane highway from the oil and gas fields all the way to the East Coast with bumper-to-bumper 18-wheeler trucks transporting nothing but oil and gas for the entire 2,000 miles, 24 hours a day, for every day of the year. Personally, I don't believe 8 lanes of bumper-to-bumper 18-wheelers for 2,000 miles would have been a safer way to deal with the potential chaos from one explosion. But who am I? I'm just an engineer. This sermon was supposed to be about some of the contradictions I've faced in my life, but it turned into some of the contradictions we all face. In my opinion, we are all struggling simply to manage the chaos going on all around us. And that requires we live
An engineer.
the I have in mind.
He was an engineer.
Is that I love order and chaos, things that are completely in opposition to each other. Like it or not, each of us is just a highly organized collection of atoms plucked from the chaos of the universe. Our bodies are made from the stuff of stars, and by some as yet unexplained phenomena, our particular collections of atoms came together and became something we call life. Even so, prior to the current situation, each of our collections have probably never before been a part of something called life. And all too soon, our atoms will return to the chaos from which they came. So order and chaos are parts of who we are. Personally, I love for things to be in order. My friends laugh and say it's the engineer in me. I actually have to watch myself so that I don't become obsessed with one particular order. I also have to remind myself that everything doesn't need to be in my preferred order. But contrary to my love for order, I also love the chaos of abstract art, which has absolutely no order whatsoever. I love thunderstorm and the rain pounding down and a heavy snowfall. But a blizzard, I'm not so fond of. And I love the ocean and walking on a beach and the roar of waves. And like abstract art, all of these things are chaotic, and I believe they are beautiful. It's actually hard for me to imagine a better example of what I'm talking about than Galveston. You have a beautiful town with nice, orderly streets, beautiful homes and gardens, wonderful restaurants, and yet you live next to the awesome, chaotic Gulf of Mexico, and you love it. And yet, sometimes your efforts to contain the Gulf and its chaos fail, and it inundates your beautiful city. It's always a challenge maintaining order in the face of unrelenting chaos. But as I said, I also love order, and order is necessary to function in our society. In the last few years, I've worked during elections as both a clerk and an election judge. Harris County created a manual with step-by-step instructions for conducting an election. And in my experience, if you don't follow those instructions in the exact order, the result is often absolute chaos. I became somewhat dictatorial as an election judge, repeating frequently, follow the directions, they work. That's just one example of why order is so important. But I'll go back to our bodies for another example. I believe our primary job as human beings is to keep our bodies running. And to do that, we must take care of them. We must keep them in good working order, with an emphasis on the word order. There's a quote that I think applies. Ships don't sink because of the water around them. Ships sink because of the water that's in them. Don't let what's happening around you get inside and weigh you down. Our bodies are our ships in this life, and our job is to keep them intact. Before the advent of antibiotics, simple cuts let bacteria into our bodies, and that often led to death. Today, that's not much of a problem, but it's still our job to keep our bodies intact so that the drugs aren't necessary. That's one way we keep the chaos at bay, ensuring that we always have healthy and intact bodies. So once again, I recognize the need for order in life and for my body. But I also love and appreciate a lot of the chaos going on all around me. It's an ongoing battle between the two extremes. We absolutely must minimize the chaos, or it will reclaim our bodies, even while we enjoy and appreciate some of that same chaos. George Raveling, a famous basketball coach and also an executive for Nike, shared one of his core beliefs that really resonates with me. He said, one of our fundamental purposes as human beings is to create order and structure from the chaos of existence. Yes, where possible, we must help bring order to the chaos of our existence. Unfortunately, order doesn't ensure absolute security. Relentlessly trying to force some order is the mistaken belief that you're in control. You will never be in total control. Natural order is birth to death, day to night, and that is change. Change goes on forever. There's a precise order to baking a cake, and then you eat that cake before it spoils because it's already changing. Change is absolutely natural. Recently, I was working in our patio garden, mostly pulling weeds, and I realized a garden is our attempt at organizing and trying to control a little piece of nature. Regardless of our efforts, however, nature constantly reasserts random and chaotic growth because order in nature is seldom natural. I may like the order in my life, and I may also appreciate much of the chaos all around me. But, and there's always a but, I must accept both order and chaos. Finding some sort of balance is challenging, and frankly, it often eludes me. Order and chaos are simply parts of the world we live in. My second contradiction is that I love to fight for causes that I'm passionate about. And those causes generally fall under the category I call righteous indignation. Unfortunately, there's often not much I can actually do to affect a positive change, or I must curtail my actions in the face of other more pressing issues. One of the causes I can actually do something about involves elections. Each month, I donate to Fair Fight, an organization created by Stacey Abrams, which fights voter suppression. Locally, however, and as I already mentioned, I decided to be an election clerk. And for a few years, I worked in several elections in that limited capacity. In one election, when I wasn't working, I went to vote and something went wrong. And none of the clerks could solve the problem, and I didn't get to vote. Since it was a minor election, I didn't press the issue, but I decided to become an election judge so that I could solve similar problems. I got the necessary training and then worked in several elections as an election judge to ensure everyone got to vote. I successfully acted on my own personal righteous indignation. During one of those elections, I was wearing my badge stating that I was the Democratic judge. I happened to be working in a mainly Republican precinct, and a man approached me with his version of righteous indignation. He asked indignantly, where was the Republican judge? I calmly explained we were all paid volunteers and there were no Republicans willing to work that particular election. He backed off. Sometimes we either need to show up or shut up. Last fall, I was asked once again to work the election. But because of Randy's condition, I felt it was more than I could take on. Randy takes precedence, always. The bottom line is we can't fight for all the causes we believe in. We have to pick our battles. In fact, there are many causes I feel righteous indignation over. Climate change, plastics, the Israeli-Palestinian conflicts, and now I add the Israeli-Iran conflicts, and immigration, to name a few. With most of them, however, there is very little I can actually do, apart from voting for people who will champion solutions to the problems or by contributing to organizations that have an opportunity to affect some positive change. But, and here's that but again, I must accept that these terrible problems exist and there isn't much I can do. So, do what you can to make things better with the causes you are passionate about. Help right the wrongs you see in this life and then let go and move on, knowing you've done all you can do. And if you find that position somewhat defeatist, come back next month when my sermon will be about never giving up. Yes, another contradiction. My final contradiction revolves around change. In short, I both love and despise change. As a child, I always looked forward to summer breaks and new school years, and later to new jobs and new places to live. And all of these events required change. But I also love routine, like my uninterrupted morning coffee and reflections ritual, and knowing exactly what is scheduled for the week. Having meals planned out ahead of time. And I put a lot of effort into my sermons so that they go exactly as planned, with few surprises. The essence of a surprise is some sort of unexpected change, hopefully a pleasant, but they're not always pleasant. So change can be both good and it can be very bad, and there are all sorts of versions in between. Yes, change is often difficult, and yet change is inevitable. In my opinion, we mostly choose to ignore the change we must face or the change we need. A change I've been resisting is wearing reading glasses. For years, I've done everything I could to avoid wearing them. I print my sermons in very large font, so I won't need them up here. But reading most restaurant menus without glasses is difficult. Frequently, I have to get up and retrieve my glasses from my car simply to read the menu. Now, more part of my morning ritual is a reminder to wear my glasses, and I'll be glad when that reminder finally sinks in. Unfortunately, sometimes we don't accept the major changes that are seriously impacting our lives. As my mother aged, she began to have many health challenges. At one point, she asked me, "Why is this happening to me?" She never accepted the fact that all of our bodies start to fail as we age. Just a short while later, after she was diagnosed with congestive heart failure, she basically gave up. She stopped doing any and all exercises, even though some exercise would have been beneficial. I believe fear took over. Our bodies change. That's just a fact of life. We generally survive change, but sadly, we don't always survive it. And that's also a reality of change. Change can be exciting, and it can also be very scary. My challenge is to accept and make the most of all changes going on in my life, regardless of the reason for the changes. Early in this service, I mentioned fire from natural gas. When it's controlled, it can be very useful. But when it's uncontrolled, it's mostly destructive. In both cases, fire represents change. As you use, we know this and embrace the symbolism each time we light our chalice, which is a fire. Yes, change can be frightening, but it's going to happen whether you like it or not. So you might as well get used to it and embrace it if at all possible. Marcus Aurelius has a famous quote, and it goes like this: "A blazing fire makes flame and brightness out of everything that is thrown into it." His quote can be a powerful metaphor for embracing adversity and challenges. It also suggests that facing difficulties and overcoming obstacles can actually lead to growth, strength, and a deeper understanding of oneself. Remember, a fire transforms whatever is added to it. But the takeaway is we can use that fire to cook our food, to keep us warm, and to light up the darkness. So use it. But, and this is my last but, change is going to happen. So watch for it and accept that it's part of life. So if you're like me and you like both order and chaos, by all means strive for some order in your life, but know the chaos will eventually take over and things will change. It's absolutely going to happen. So make the best of it. And if you're like me and you often experience righteous indignation, do what you can within your own power to right the wrongs and remember injustice and seemingly intractable problems have always been and will always be part of life, whether you like it or not. So, to the degree possible, accept and adjust to these realities. I must constantly remind myself that life is never going to be the nice, neat, orderly package I often try to create for myself. There will always be change. Well,
I think we could get down there a little early. That would give us time before the shop hours to get that shellfish.
Oh, yeah.
why? Because the only real alternative is death. And I really enjoy being alive and living my actual life amidst all the beautiful and challenging feelings.
Look, the light broke right when I was using it. I'll keep the fake light, not the. Well, I keep little piles for Lisa Rosenberg, who makes jewelry, and for